Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to the High Level series. I am so excited to speak to this wildly successful CEO, high level CEO, Kori Leigh. And we're going to be diving into, I think, some spicy content here, some spicy, discussions between Kori and I. Hello, it's going to be really good. I mean, she always brings the spice. So I'm excited to have her on. We're going to dive into some of these higher level conversations. I'm going to let her in. She's requesting when it comes to being bold online and so this is going to be an incredible conversation. So stick around. These high level series. Hello, Kori. How are you? Good. I always have to readjust this camera. Now it's like half my head's chopped off. Let's go up a little bit higher. There we go. All right. All right. Yeah. So I was just introducing, what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the high level series. This is going to be about like a 20-minute thing. So for those who want to, watch the whole thing, this is going to be fire. So don't leave. Kori always has I don't know if you guys watch Kori. If you don't yet, you need to. I mean, her content, Kori, your content is like the one I like to read every day because you're always activating me and I just love it. So hello, Christy. So say hello if you're watching live. Okay, so let's dive in. Welcome. Before we begin though, I have to say something. I need to speak to you about this. So I know that you hurt your ankle and it's swelling and you're trying to figure out what it is. Okay, so I burnt my hand today on the tea kettle. I was literally, you can see it's red right here. I was pouring it and then the lid came off. So it was actually the steam hit my hand. And now it's just all day. It's just kind of if I don't have ice on it, it's it burns. And I try to resist the pain. I'm okay, I can get through this. I'm nope. And then I go and get an ice pack and put it on. But before we dive into the boldness and the embodiment piece, I want to ask you, because I always feel it's universe being telling us something when we get hurt. So I want to know, do you feel the same way? Whenever you get an injury, do you ever feel it's some sort of something energetic?
I never believe it's my body. I'm never, oh, I sprained my ankle. What did you do?
Yes.
Oh, I've been moving through this and that, and the body is always speaking to us. 100%. It's releasing. It's speaking to us. It's guiding us. The body is always talking.
Yeah. So is there anything coming through for you with this injury? What are you I know what this means.
Well, I left a container last weekend, a very self-loyal decision,
yes.
And that was very scary after months of feeling not good, very not good, to keep it as brief as possible. And I think I had two separate people send me excerpts of rebelling against authority, unshackling ourselves from tables and situations that no longer feel supportive or conducive to our evolution and development. I think that it's been that. And I think that over the past 6 months for me, I've really been in a place of unplugging from a lot of the echo chamber, the bullshit, the noise, the lack of authenticity, and unplugging from that and really coming back into God, my heart, my inner voice. And I think this ankle thing is another opportunity, and it has been this weekend of slowing down and letting life guide me instead of me being a control freak about where I think I ought to go when I think I ought to be there.
Okay, I just got chills when you were saying that, because I do, watch your content. And it's I feel I'm with you on your life's journey, which is incredible, right? When your audience feels like that. But when you're sharing what you think it is, I'm yeah, totally. Because I know what's happening in your world. I know how you're more leaning into more God-led, the feminine energy, leading from soul and heart, that's coming through in your content and the way you're leading yourself. So we're going to dive into the embodiment part. And that makes so much sense with the ankle, so a mirror to what you're going through.
The left side of my body too. So the feminine, it's all feminine. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, mine is the right hand.
Yeah.
So masculine. I gotta figure this out. I feel like for me, I'm like, there's a couple things I wanted to, like I wanted to create some slideshows for something I want to record. And I'm like, I feel like this is meant for tomorrow. And there's something else I need to be doing or not doing, right? After this. So.
Burns and hands after, after I'm going to look into burns
What'd you say?
and raw.
Okay. Yeah. Message me. I want to know. Okay. I want to dive into, there's like two juicy topics. So one is, I know you for being bold, for really like expressing your truth. And it's like speaking your truth, even if it's not going to be with the status quo, agrees with, or basically going against the grain is like what I like to say when I look at your content. And this is something that was really hard for me to do even last year. And it's something that I had been working through over this past year, the inner healing of really showing up as a leader in what I believe to be true, or what's worked for me at least. I mean, who knows what is actually truth, but my truth. And what was holding me back was really the judgment of other leaders on what they stood for. And if I did something that was opposite or different, it was like, I didn't want them not to like me, or, sever any of our like connections, that kind of thing. And I think this like takes it to a whole nother level of leadership where it's like, Kori, you're going to say things that I'm going to be like, I don't resonate with that. Like, I don't agree. But like, this is where there's this like higher level of leadership is like, but we still can be like this, right? Like, it's okay that I don't lead in the way Kori does, or you don't in the way that I do. And then we have like these different belief systems, and we can still be respectful and still, like I can still love you to death and be like, oh, cool. Like, I love that opinion. Mine's a little different. But yeah, if you want to speak to that, because I know that this has been a massive thing in my journey of like kind of up leveling or going to this next like level of me and how I'm supposed to show up. And I want to hear from you, like, is it easy for you? Has it gotten easier? And how's really impacted the success of your business?
Oh, this is, for me, I've always been like this. Like, I've never known how to have a filter and like,
yeah,
like make it, like I was called harsh when I was little. Like my mother called me harsh, and I just, and now I have a 3.5-year-old, so I know they just say it how they say it, and they mean no harm, saying it how they say it, and that's how it's, it's not that I don't want to be, it's not that I don't care if I'm not liked, because I'm still a human who wants to belong, and I want to be liked, but I've always been, it seems like just the natural way that my self is quite polarizing and activating. Like I don't even need to speak and that people are triggered or activated or either not. So it's just been a very natural thing to say it how it is. And quite honestly, I never feel like it's intense until somebody is like, I can see their response, or they're like, oh my God, you're so honest. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that like, I just said it how it was. So it's really just a natural thing for me. And in business, I've had to learn how to filter myself through what serves my ideal client versus just spewing all of my thoughts of all of the things all the time on the internet. But the other thing that stands out to me too, like the two truths coexisting at the same time, like I like that. I like sovereignty, and I believe that we shouldn't be in monothink or mono spirituality. Like it isn't one way, there are many paths, and it is a place of great self-leadership to be able to see that there are many paths. And I think a lot of people talk about multiple truths, but don't actually know how to coexist with multiple truths. And I think the other thing that stands up to me about what you said too is I want to be severed from those that won't be in a place of deep integrity where two truths or multiple truths can coexist. So if my verbiage does create that severance, a severance between incongruent leadership and people that are in congruent leadership, I'm happy for that. That's like energetic standards.
Yeah. I feel like that leads into like the embodiment piece too. I feel like this is like kind of, we can go back and forth with this, but yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk a little bit about the integrity and the embodiment, and just seeing some things that, you've observed and feel, at least when it comes to, you know, walking the walk. And because this is like I want it to be like these series, I want it to be more of like going into like, how do you get to like, you now are having these 40K months, right? And you're having more women come into your world and bigger impact. And it's like, well, what has led here? I mean, we could be like, let's be consistent. You know what I mean? Like, have really good content, but it's more than that. So yeah, let's talk a bit about that, like integrity and embodiment, you know, to help some of the women who are watching who are like, okay, but how can I go to this higher level of leadership there?
This is not going to sound like business strategy, but I live my life in a way. Okay, I'm going to use my ankle as an example. I'm going to the chiro today to find out the verdict, like what exactly is happening. And when I fell on Thursday and I heard the crack, and I immediately like, what about solo mothering? And what about getting to the gym? And that's my side. Like, I could easily go on these future trips. And then I'm like, what are we praying for? Are we praying for a hairline fracture or a fracture or a break or a sprain or a high sprain or a low sprain? Like, and the reality is like, I'm not praying for any results. I'm praying for me to be led in the way that God needs me to be led, period. So for me, that's how my business has been. Like, anytime I've taken control over what my goals should be and where I should be at, my internal world goes frazzled. And it's not self-leadership for me. That's not, for some people, that is a real, and I have clients that like, they love a plan, they love to manifest the things, that's an appropriate thing for them. But for me, it's been a matter of like every day leaning into what's God's plan for through me. And like, that means that I don't necessarily know that I'll hit $100,000 a month or even a $40,000 a month again. And who do I be if I mean, I remember last February was my lowest month in my business, and who I beed was exactly the same as who I am now. Nobody in the online space knows the difference of if I'm like in fear versus not. Well, they do, because I usually say it out loud. I think that's another piece of body, never pretend it's not. So for me, the embodiment is like living in service and in a state of authenticity. That word is like so cliche, but like being where I'm at on a daily basis, knowing that I don't have full control over. I can show up, I can do the deed, I can be in action, but at the end of the day, once the seed is planted underneath the soil, the growth, the way that it grows and blossoms and create a harvest is between the seed and the soil, not me. I don't know if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking like, so for those entrepreneurs who, you know, the women watching who are like, they have that kind of fear or scarcity of like, okay, but I do need the money to come in. And it's like, how do we be in the state then of the service and kind of, you know, more the heart-led, the God-led, really. And you said there's no right or wrong way. There are people who are like, this is my goal, this is what I want to go after, let's manifest. But in the energy of how you lead yourself, I want to hear more about this, because I feel like it can be a pendulum sometimes where it's like, okay, focus on my heart, my soul, my mission, God-led. And then on other days, it's like, hey, strategically, like, what do I need to do? Because it's not, you know, maybe things aren't working kind of thing. So yeah, if you can speak on that, like, how do you, because there are probably times where you said you've had some like months where you had your lowest month, where you still lead, I guess, with faith.
I get what you're saying. One of the common things that I think gets misconstrued when it comes to surrender and energy, for me anyway, and the way that I do it is like, I think that the commonality of approach to surrender means like good vibes. We're like waiting. Oh, it's all about patience. Oh, I'll just be in the energy and focus on my heart. And like, for me, a God-led approach is action. It is surrender is it's action. Like, surrender is not sit back and create a vision board. Surrender is like, I do the things I need to do. If I'm launching, I've got a message, I've got to show up, I've got to engage with my community, I've got to have something to launch. That means I'm usually working with a mentor or taking a course, or like I'm learning and I'm leaning into. I'm also tending to the stuff within my life that keeps me sane. So I'm going to recovery meetings every day, the gym every day, mothering. Like, I'm well resourced, I'm hydrated, I'm drinking water. Like, I'm doing this shitload of stuff in the background that tends to the garden of my soul. And then recognizing where the action had, like, okay, so on Monday, I do Monday things. I'm launching, I've done my launch, I've done my engagement, I've tended to my clients, I did my recovery, I did all those things. then that's where the surrender piece comes in of like, it's out of my control now. I've done the things I need to do. Now I can either stress and ruminate and think over it and be stressed over it, or I can know that tomorrow is a new day. And when it comes to entrepreneurs, like to build my business, I was an entrepreneur for the past 13 years. And for the first 10 of these 13 years, I had other jobs. So I never was like, I need to make the money from this launch, because the launch doesn't care. The launch isn't like, oh, she's got to pay her bills. I guess like that's the strategy. That frantic energy isn't a strategy. So for me, it's like, where can I loosen the grip and relieve the stress and pressure so that the growth of the business can happen as it's designed to happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's what I love about breaking down to our audience, for them to see like what the actual journey was, because there are some people who may be looking at you. I did it the other day in a post where it was like, well, actually, this is how it unfolded, where it showed like I taught for the first, I was still a teacher for the first, 4 years of my business. And really, I didn't resign until this year. So like that was, I still had that job. And every year it was like I took a step towards, part-time leave of my teaching job. And then that's my journey. But like people don't see sometimes the entire story of like the journey of what got you to where you are now. And I've said to you before, like there's no shame in holding a job. If you're building your business while you're holding a job. And I love how you tapped into this, like there's no force for that frazzled energy, because there's not that like, I need to have this money now.
Been like, okay, so when I have gotten into frazzled energy, because I'm human and I'm an obsessive freak, so like I can get frazzled easily. I have to come into a database check-in. And like I had a question, I get this question a lot of like, how do you know when to pivot? How do you know when it's a pivot or you need to walk away? This is watering a dead garden. And I think that's deeply personal, but for me, it has a lot to do with the database check-in. And so I'll be like, okay, for example, I'm panicking about money. On Monday, February 27th or whatever day it is, do we need to be panicked about money? We check, okay, no, the panic isn't here. So how long can I put this on the shelf before I need to make the decision of if I need another job to support this? And then I'll be like, okay, maybe on March 5th, I'll pull this off the shelf and we'll see where we're at. So that there's constantly this check and balance of, it's okay to create other means of support as we're building these things. And I think like this is a major reason why a large part of my branding and messaging is I talk a lot about what it was like for me. I mean, 6 years ago, I was at alcoholic bottom. Like I was at my second rock bottom in a decade. I had no money. I was depressed. I was suicidal. Like it was a total disaster, and had been that way for a decade while I was also building a business and writing books and doing all these things. But I think in the online space, it's so easy to just like assume, project our own fears onto somebody else that they're doing so well. And we forget like that didn't just happen. It wasn't like, oh, I decided to start a business and then in 2 weeks I started making 6 figures. Like, no, what actually happened to get the person to that place?
Yeah. Speaking on that, I was thinking about this the other day because I did a post, well, I did the same post where I was basically like, you see her, she's had, 450K sales in business in 1 year. And then they're all like, I want that. And then like 6 months later, they haven't even hit 5K and they throw in the towel. And then here's the reality. It's taken 7 years to get here. However, there are some online entrepreneurs who do come in and within months, like I have a couple in my mastermind who within months, they've already had like 100K in their business and they literally just come in. The only thing about that, and I kind of want to hear your opinion, it may be completely different than mine, but I was reflecting on this because I was like, actually, there are some cases where people just come in, they have a knack for it. Like they've also been in sales though, in some point in their life, these women. But I'm wondering about the sustainability, because when I look at my 7 years, and I said this in my post where it's like, I'm thankful that I went through all that I did, that the woman I became like all the things I had to do to get here. Like if I had that overnight, I would still be the Carissa from 7 years ago. Like I'm not the same person. So for someone who suddenly gets it in like, you know, a few months, has their 100K or whatever they're wanting, but do they have the skills to sustain it and continue to go? Like, what's your opinion on this? Or do you feel
I love
like
this?
Yeah.
I think this is so nuanced in the sense that we don't know somebody's whole path. So when they come in and they get it right away, we don't know, not even in this lifetime, but like what has their money codes been like in the past generation? What kind of money mindset did they grow up with? Like maybe they grew up with money and money was easy to receive. Maybe it wasn't necessarily even a skill set within their business, but their receiving wound didn't exist because that wasn't passed down versus somebody else that was like trying and hustling, and they had built these things and taken the courses and they're doing but they grew up in like, I don't know, an alcoholic and abusive home, and the receiving wound was like, it's like, it's so nuanced. I know for me that had I received the success, I couldn't have received the success that I have now 7 years ago or 10 years ago, because what has made me an amazing mentor and coach is what I went through. Like I had to go through that. That's what's given my depth and my faith.
Yeah.
So some people have to heal first and then make the money, and some people make the money first and they heal second. Like that's a pretty common archetype in like a CEO world, where we've got these high achieving, burnt out, adrenal fatigue, wealthy, single, struggling with weight, struggling with relationship, but successful financially. And that's where then their inner work happens. So it's like we can't really actually compare these journeys because they're so nuanced and so in depth that we think like in this one human lifetime she came on the scene, and it's like actually generational, actually what's been passed down cellularly from 5 generations before, and what are we actually dealing with in this lifetime. All of that plays into our success and our healing, which all of that's invisible to the naked eye in the reality of online Instagram launch.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So this is so good. This conversation is so good. I love how you brought that up, because I'm even, as you were speaking, I'm thinking about, you know, my own path of not speaking my truth and being afraid. And this was because of like some incidences growing up. Like I've always been bold. My family has been like, she says it like it is. She's just bold. My friends were like, she has no filter. Like I was known to be that way with my friends. But then there were some incidences where I didn't have a filter, or I was bold and then lost people, right? Or there was something wrong with me, or yeah, like people who, if you were friends for forever and then boom, you say one thing and then they left. So like I started to attach this, if I speak my truth, they'll not like me and I'll lose, you know, important people. And so there was that inner wound with myself that I've had to work through over the past year. And I'm just comparing to, you know, you talking about, well, we don't know, you know, their coding or their trauma or their wounds or not. And so even with some of these people where in my mastermind, where it's like they've just shown up and it's just like, whoa, out of nowhere. I mean, they're very outspoken, they're very bold, and there's no reservation to it that they're like, I just see me and I just say it. And so just like comparing that, where it's like, oh, this has been work that I've had to do. And I've had to go through this healing and this journey. And yeah, so I this would be a really good piece of content, I feel like, because it's like, we don't know the layers of how they got there in like 6 months, right? And their life and their,
I mean,
their story.
like there's this, I was recently told of this study that was done with mice, and like I'm a major generational healing person. I like the pattern ending, and like it's a big part of the mission that I personally. But they did this study with rats, and they put the rats into the container in a cage, like bless the rats, and then they squirted lavender in, and when the lavender would get squirted in, they'd electrocute their feet. And so when the lavender came in, they started to learn, they got electrocuted and they would jump. And so they did this time and time again, and eventually they stopped electrocuting them, but they'd still spray the lavender in, and they would jump because they thought they were getting electrocuted. So then they took the rats out, and then they had lots of babies. All these babies, generations passed, and they took generations away from what had ever happened, put them back in the container, and these rats never got electrocuted. These were generations past. And when they sprayed the lavender in, the rats jumped. So like that wounding, the female wound, the sisterhood wound, the mother wounding, the money wounding, our sexual wound, our desire wound, our pleasure wound, all these wounds are passed down from generation to generation. And we show up in our business and it's like, but I'm doing the things. Why am I not getting the result? Like, because we've got to do the healing work in order to unlock that coding so that we can then receive or show up in visibility. And not all of us have the same wounds that were passed down.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. As you're speaking, my hand is like on fire. What? When you're talking about like, if you guys are just joining, I burnt my hand today on the steam on our tea kettle because the lid like fell off when it was pouring and the steam hit it. And like it's been fine this whole time we've been talking. And then right at the end when you're like, wounds that need to be healed and generational like patterns and trauma and breaking. So now I'm like, okay, I'm going deeper into this. You can look up the hand wound if you want from me. And I'm going to like do some journaling after this and be like, because of course there's generational, you know, things within my family for sure. Like so much. So I'm like, okay, I got to go into this on like where some of these, you know, wounds for myself, because I feel like now this was meant to happen to like relate to this discussion for me.
I had a client, this is one of my favorite stories in the Inner Work Vortex a million years ago, and she was grieving the loss of her mother, and she had her what I call the eternal birthday, and it was the death anniversary of her mom's death. And so in our coaching call, she had this terrible injury in her hand, and also she had vacated or abandoned her art. And so I was like asking questions about this art and what was going on. And it was her mom that did art.
I am getting chills. Okay, I gotta tell you. Okay, keep telling your story because this is crazy. Okay, keep going.
Her art. And I'm the kind of coach, like nothing is face value to me. I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So mom taught you the art. We're really grieving. Yeah. Her mom had been dead for like 9 years or something like that. I'm sharing this because we've shared it on public and stories like numerous times. And so I was like, we dug in deeper to this whole thing. And so then we looked up in Louise Hay, and the specific finger that was injured was grief of a family member. So what we did in our coaching was no longer go to physio for your finger. It was like, let's deal with the grief of the passing of your mom. Let's really create a connection there and grieve there. And she did that. Her hand healed and she returned to her art.
Okay. This is gonna blow you away. And Ashley, who's watching, she's like, oh my gosh, she knows. Okay, so this is you're gonna be like, what the heck? Or no, you're not gonna be surprised. You're like that. This is what was So this is my right hand, Ashley. On the weekend, I don't know if you had seen my stories. My daughter was upset because she's playing this game with her friend online, and she really wanted this like elephant character, and she didn't get the elephant character. So I went and I drew her this cartoon elephant. And I go and I showed this story. I was like, she was upset, so I drew her this cartoon elephant. And my husband was like, you traced this? I'm like, no, I'm actually like, I can draw. Like, and he didn't know that about me. He didn't know that I could draw like that. And so my mom's a very talented artist. And I had posted right after that because people were like DMing me. They're like, did you draw that? I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm whatever, can draw. But my mom's like like she can draw as right now and it looks real. Like you think it's a photo. So I posted a bunch of her artwork. And now you're sharing this story about a mother who passed away, who was artistic. And I've been having this call like the last year where it's like, bring out that creative side, like go back to your art, you know, as that like kind of feminine energy thing that lights me up, brings me pleasure, that's separate from doing business, right? It's like that creative expression. So maybe just you telling that story, I'm like, this might be like, okay. And I was even thinking like of how good my mom is. I'm like, if I had have worked at it and actually stuck with it, I would have been just as good as her. So it takes practice. You can't, you're naturally talented, but you also need to learn, you know, details and how to do that. So I was like, maybe my mom can like be teaching me some of this. So anyway, which is like healing some wounds, because there's this big massive part of not being deeply connected, or we could go down a rabbit hole with this, Kori.
Oh.
The wounds there, the mother-daughter wounds, right?
Tying into like the visibility wounds, the showing up, like it was just said in the comments, the elephant is a matriarchal wound. It would be really interesting to play into like your grandma's relationship with art, or with the hands, where burning that showed up, where like, yeah, this is the work that then unlocks strategy, money, visibility, and business success. It's like the backdoor healing of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So you can look at your giving and there's so much happening here. Prosperity, your hands are an extension of your heart chakra. Ooh, I love it. Okay. Well, it's already 1:30. So this went way different. Like we're supposed to, like, this is like where divine comes in, right? And like leads us here, because we did tap on the things we wanted to, but then, yeah, I just like feel like the intuitive, like psychic Kori came out, not intentionally, but it came out. And it was like this whole conversation was meant to happen with our wounds and the healing part. And yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking at this art expression, but the mother wound too after this.
I could talk infinitely about the mother wounds. So
yeah, no, I know. And this is the thing that I love about you, is everything you brought up in this conversation, I already know about you. And I already know because you embody the thing, you express the thing, you walk the walk. I mean, I see it in your stories, in your content. Like none of this is new to me. It's like, and that's what I love about you, is I see how you do embody it behind the scenes. It's not that you're like, I'm just gonna put this in my content. It's like, I'm seeing you live it every day. And that to me is magnetic, right? Where it's just like, she's doing it. Like this is the being part that is hard to explain and describe to people. But I think watching Kori, if you don't, just like watch her stories, you're gonna see that like true embodiment of you and yeah, in your dreams and where you want to go and how you lead and all those things. So thank you for being on here. It's a pleasure. You're welcome. And is there, if you can let people know what's going on in your world. Yeah, I mean, your Instagram's here, but yeah,
come to Instagram. I'm always launching things and playing with things and like taking metaphors from absolutely everything. There's always like depth and sarcasm. Like you're gonna get like God depth and just triggered in my world.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. You get the soul, then you get like the like spicy too. So I love it.
At all times together.
Ooh. I love it. Well, thank you, Kori. It's been amazing.
Look into your
bye.
Hand.
Okay. Oh yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.